Hello and welcome to all of our live viewers today. Our webinar is entitled How Hybrid Work Will Revolutionize Corporate Travel. We'll get started in a couple of minutes. Just let all of you file in. So hang in there. We'll be right with you. Hi again, everyone. My name is Kristen. I'll be moderating today. Before we introduce our speakers, I just want to get a little housekeeping out of the way and let you know how you can interact with our guest and host. So we are currently in a Zoom webinar. As an attendee, you are not on video or audio. You are in listen and view only mode. However, you can submit your questions live using the Q&A panel. The chat function is disabled for our attendees, but we may send out information via the chat. Meanwhile, again, feel free to use that Q&A, and you can also use the webinar reactions. We are recording today's webinar, and we'll be sending out a follow-up email with a link to the recording. And now let me introduce our special guest. After receiving his bachelor's degree in electrical engineering, Johnny Clemmons began his professional career as an intelligence officer in the U.S. Army, specializing in signals intelligence. With over 15 years in the construction industry, Johnny developed an in-depth knowledge of best practices, systems, and means and methods, and held various positions from district manager to president. He is a lead LEED accredited professional and currently serves as global head of SAP's Industry Business Unit Real Estate and Construction, where he works with customers to find innovative solutions to business problems. And with that, I'll pass things off to Eyal Lasker, CEO of Flexspace.
All right, thanks, Kristen. Hello, Johnny.
Hi.
Hi, great having you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, maybe just to set the stage, mutual friend and colleague introduced us a couple of months ago, and we started to chat about future of work and travel, exchange ideas, went back and forth. And I just thought it would be great to have you and to have this conversation for like an audience that is constantly thinking about future of workspaces, the real estate, how to manage hybrid work, and how travel, as we see, really comes down to all of that. So, obviously with COVID for 2 years, business travels went down to zero, but still companies were able to be productive, deliver services and products. But as soon as that ended, corporate travel went back and then some. So I guess maybe just to start, kick us off with the basic core question of why do we travel for work?
Yeah, so there's a number of reasons travel for work, right? But it's mostly about, personal connection, right? That, humans are social creatures, and we need those personal connections. And many people feel like you can't get the same connection through a remote conference, even the most sophisticated remote conferencing technologies, that you still can't get the same thing. You can't share a meal, right, with a customer or with a teammate that way. So that's a lot of people are traveling to restore that personal connection, whether that's with people on their own team or whether that's with customers around the world. So those are the real reasons. It's that's that connection, and then obviously there are people that feel like collaboration is much better in person. And I'm actually one of those, right? When you're doing a collaborative work, trying to brainstorm an idea, in person tends to be much more effective than remote.
Definitely. And one more thing that we learned is that work really transitioned into a hybrid work model, right? And I just saw recently a study that came out from Harvard Business School and Amex, talking about how companies should invest in travel, exactly to your point, right? To build that in-person connection that eventually leads to culture, employee engagement. Kristen, if we have that, maybe we can share it with the audience. I think that's an interesting one that can bring value. But with that, so work has changed, right? Travel or corporate travel used to be around more like the external piece of that, mainly for meeting customers, right? It was driven by sales mostly with a clear ROI, right? And now what we're seeing with companies becoming more distributed, remote, hybrid models, right, is that, and to the point of the study as well, travel now seems to become part of the company's operating system, right? So instead of just being for the external function, it actually is starting to be used internally as well. And I think, obviously coming from SAP Concur, it will have a huge impact on how you think about corporate travel.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So there are companies that are looking at the hybrid work models, and they're thinking about that. What does that mean? And then they look at, how do I ensure that I continue my culture? And when you have globally distributed teams, how do you build that culture in a globally distributed team? And business travel to have those teams meet, and people are using various ways to do that. They'll use events as an opportunity to bring more of their people together, and then schedule some time on the front or the back of that for team meetings and whatnot to go through those things. And so there's certainly that desire to build your culture and using travel as a component of that. And then obviously you mentioned SAP technologies with Concur, and the way that many companies use that to schedule their travel and to track the expenses associated with their travel. Obviously they're trying to get the best value in the travel, and set up corporate policies around that to manage those things, but using various methods of piggybacking on events or setting up special opportunities for teams to get together is really valuable.
So is that really something on the roadmap of SAP, to think more broadly about travel and how you incorporate that into the operating system of, because it's becoming now also a function of HR, right? And employee engagement, not solely for external sales as we used to know it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things when you think about SAP, like many companies, has a return to the office policy in place. But when we think about, our return to the office, or, we think about it in terms of what we're really looking for is to create opportunities for people to engage with one another. And whether that's engaging actually in a physical office, or whether that's engaging at a customer side, or whether that's engaging with partners, any place where you're meeting with the people that you work with, whatever role those people are in, and doing that in a work context counts, toward that return to the office sort of policy, because it meets the objectives that we have of creating those connections between people and those personal connections. So we look at it that way, and so it is becoming part of the fabric of that. And travel is obviously a big part of that. When we think about from a technology perspective, obviously on the Concur side, with the it's a business travel network, and we have the network of partners out there, from hotels to airlines to all the different people that are involved in travel, and being able to access all of those things through that single piece of technology, and then have your expense report built up at the end of that automatically by the AI that's embedded in the solution, is part of making all of this seamless as part of that fabric of what you're doing. That travel's not an ordeal; it's something that's supported by the underlying processes of the business.
So just adding to that, and I think it's interesting, right? You're wearing two hats. You have the travel hat, and then you have the real estate hat. And from like a company perspective now, where there are like two forces that contradicts maybe. One is really the in-office, the real estate, the leases, right, to manage that, and that part of the budget and that part of the expense. And then the second piece is where you have more people traveling, less people at some days or at the office, right? So is there now like a broader view of how a company should think about how travel and real estate complement each other, and think about how they manage those two budgets in a more coherent way?
Yeah, there's certainly a conflict there, right? As you mentioned, right? When you have you have a facilities organization within your business that's looking at minimizing the facilities costs while maximizing the employee experience within that, and then you add the complexity of hybrid work on top of that, of how many people work each day. You need to meet a maximum capacity. You have to have enough space for what your maximum occupancy is going to be on any given day. And so that drives a bit of a conflict, right? If we have all this space, then we'd like people to come in and be in it as much as possible. But if we reduce the space too much, then we can't get the people there when they need to be. And then so there's certainly a conflict there. And then particularly when you start thinking about traveling and meeting spaces and bringing in people from other locations for meetings, that further complicates how do you determine the actual amount of space that you need.
Yeah, definitely. And how do you, from how companies are really dealing with that? I mean, when do you think that we'll see contraction in like the real estate, the office real estate? What's your view on that?
Yeah, all the companies that I talk to are talking about reducing their total amount of office space that they have over the next few years, even with return to the office policies. But the hybrid work component of that lets them understand that they don't need as much space as they did before, right? So virtually every company that I talk to is in the process of reevaluating their overall real estate portfolio and how much office space do they need, and then looking for solutions of how do they manage that in a flexible way, right? How do I flex my office space when I'm going to need more people? And so that becomes a really important piece for them as they look at this, because they want to reduce those fixed costs as much as possible, right? Because they don't want to be paying for space that they don't need. So everybody's looking at that and thinking about what's the right balance. I don't think anybody has all the answers yet, but it's definitely the direction that people are going, is trying to balance the space versus the occupancy of that space on a day-to-day basis.
So do you see the co-working spaces and will become a more predominant player with the overall real estate considerations of large enterprises? I mean, initially that started more for like the small startup freelancers. Obviously, we've seen it becoming more widely used with larger corporates. I mean, I still think it's a question mark, but given that companies will need to contract or reduce their office footprint, and as you say, they want to add flexibility, is there really an opportunity to use those flexible spaces as an extension that you can dial up and down as needed?
I think that's really going to become something that people look at as an option, right? If as they find it possible to reduce the overall fixed cost, right, by saying, hey, we only need an average maximum occupancy of X, but we need a surge occupancy of Y, then we need to look at the difference between X and Y and how could we fill that. And as you're thinking about, team meetings and collaborative, organizations, and you're having people travel in from other parts of the world, or you're traveling to some central location to reduce the overall travel costs, then adding flex space into your overall real estate portfolio makes a ton of sense, right? Because it's like anything else. Why would you pay for something to sit empty when you can just pay for what you use? So I see a lot of people looking at it as an option. What they're trying to figure out is, how do I do that in a dynamic way, and in a way that I'm not making excessive commitments for, hey, I'm going to use X number of square feet of flex space within a month. So they're looking for a balance of how they do it, and the way that they can do that in a consistent process, right? So that they don't have to do something extraordinary in order to do it, right? It's, if you have to go out and book a meeting place in a hotel or something, and issue a purchase order and all those sorts of things, there's too much friction in that. So they're looking for frictionless ways of accessing that flexible space.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that's like a definitely exciting part of it. So when you look ahead, what's the future of the commercial real estate, the office real estate, and what do you think will become with like the flexible space industry?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball, right? But the conversations that I'm having with people around this, I see a very definite trend, and I've said it a bit before, right? To decrease their dedicated office space to a level that supports their hybrid work environment, and to look for ways to provide a surge capacity when they need it, whether that's on a specific day for a special event, or whatever that happens to be able to occupy, to have people, be able to get together the way they need to, but also to have spaces that work for the intended use of what they're doing. So it's really all about the occupant experience, right? If people don't get the right experience, then they're not going to return to those spaces. So when you're choosing a surge space, right, or a flexible space that you want to add into you need to be able to find that to meet what you need. It can't just be an empty room. It's like, hey, we're going to get together. We're going to have a design thinking session to try to work through a particular problem. That space needs to come with all the amenities that you need from that: whiteboards and sticky notes and markers and whatnot. So you need to be able to have the ability to request that space at a very granular level, based on the needs of the people that are going to be occupying that space. If you just get an empty room and it has 2 chairs in it, and you needed a table, and you needed a number of other things, right? Then the experience is bad, and people won't come back for that.
So on top of that, right, all the changes in the way we work now, we are obviously experiencing one of the most exciting times in technology, right? Obviously with AI, right? When I think about what happened before that really transformed the way we live, the way we work, right? Obviously the internet, smartphones, and cloud computing, AI. So how do you see AI impact and play into work, hybrid work, and overall the way that we'll engage with the office and with each other?
Yeah, so AI is going to impact virtually everything that we do everywhere we go in the coming years. But when we think about it specifically in this context, right? If you have an AI, digital assistant that understands who you are and what you do, and that understands, and it has access to your calendar, and it understands the meetings that you're going to, and that, hey, there's travel coming up and you're going to this location, and it can also understand the room bookings that exist in an existing space, and it can say, hey, there's not enough space there, and can then coordinate the travel on your behalf to a certain degree and say, hey, I suggest that you book an alternate space because there's no, the room reservations for the office that day for conference rooms equipped for design thinking sessions are overbooked or they're full for that day. You're going to need a different space, and then can actually suggest spaces for you. Those are the kinds of sort of personal concierge level capabilities that AI will bring into these business functions in the business world, right? And SAP is a leader in what we call business AI, right? And that's what we mean when we talk about business AI. It's AI embedded directly into the applications that people use on a day-to-day basis, so that it can have that context and that understanding of who they are, what they're doing, what they're trying to accomplish, and can help to suggest things that are going to make that more easier for that occupant or that person doing those things, to provide that sort of seamless experience. And then thinking down the road in terms of things like what then Concur could then actually go out and book that space for you, if we've added flexible space vendors into that overall network.
Definitely right. It's interesting, right? Because you mentioned those times where teams need to come together and they need to find the right space. They also need to coordinate their calendars, understand where is most convenient for everyone to meet. Sometimes it will require travel. Sometimes it will require booking a hotel. And really, if you can layer AI on top of all of that, right? The Copilot, the planner. So, to your point, right, SAP and other applications can orchestrate this entire, ordeal that used to be very complex around making sure that everyone's available and where are we going to meet and finding the right space. All of that can be done automatically through AI. Is that kind of how you think about it?
That's exactly the way I think about it. Now, obviously, it'll be an evolutionary process. It won't all happen on day one, but that's where we're all going from an AI perspective.
How then, obviously there's concerns around just how that will impact us, right, workers, and what will that do to the job market?
Yeah, well, like every major technological revolution that's happened, right, there will be some jobs that go away, but there will be new jobs that are created, right? When the automobile took off, it had a real impact on the people who made buggy whips, right, for the horse and buggy. So there are jobs that will go away, but there are new jobs that will be created, as there were in the in those past revolution, sort of in the Industrial Revolution, and now sort of the AI revolution that's taking place.
Yeah. Maybe just one last question before we'll move to the audience question. So with all of that, right, and we covered quite a lot, what is the future specifically of the travel and expense industry, right? Where is this whole thing going? How corporate travel, corporate expense will look like 5 years from now?
Well, in 5 years from now, I think that there will be very AI driven. The personal digital companion that helps you schedule your trips and helps you to find the most economical trips and to make it very seamless for you. So if you think about a trip where you're, as I talked about before, hey, I'm going somewhere, I'm going internationally. Oh, the AI will go, well, you need an international plan added to your phone, and can help you do that. It can book your hotels. It can arrange for whether that's if you need a rental car, if you need some other type of travel. The AI will be able to help you through all those things, and ultimately pull all that together for you in a way where I believe it will be suggest these things to you, right? It won't be, okay, here it's all done for you. It'll be, hey, here's my suggested, trip for you. And then ultimately it will make that the backside of that super seamless, right? So that the expense report that you need to do out of that will be essentially completed for you. I mean, we do a lot of those things today in Concur, where we read invoices and automatically place that into the appropriate place in the expense report. We are connected directly to the various hotels, hotel chains around the world to pull those things in automatically, so you don't even have to scan your own invoice or take a picture of it. Even if you do take a picture, the AI that's in there already will read it and turn it into an expense. But it's eliminating all of those steps and just getting it directly through the network from the hotel, and it knows it was you. So I think all of that will just get easier and easier and more seamless, and require less and less effort and administration by the individual and the worker. So it's just going to reduce the friction and the administrative work that you have to do to travel, so you can focus on what it is you're trying to accomplish on that trip, and not the logistics.
Yeah, it can be taxing to plan and manage all of that. So with that, Kristen, any question from the audience for Johnny?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a couple that were emailed to us. I do want to just say that we're not able to share the link to that article or that research piece that you spoke of earlier. So we're going to put that on our Twitter account. It's a perfect opportunity to follow us on Twitter. We're Get Flexspace on Twitter. So we'll make sure to have that there for folks who are listening live, as well as folks who are listening to the recorded version of this fireside chat. So a couple questions. The first one is about who's responsible for advocating for this shift in corporate travel. Is this something that's employee driven? Is it C-suite directed? Is it something that HR needs to initiate? What are your thoughts on where it needs to come from?
It's going to come from all of those places, right? So certainly there's going to be a voice of the employee in that, right? Of, hey, I need more interaction in this way or in that way. I mean, I see it within my own team. I have a globally distributed team, and one of the number one questions is, when can we have time to meet with each other in person? So there's certainly a bottom up level of that, right? But there's also, the people in the management suites and the C-suite need to recognize that with these global distributed teams that people have, that they need to be able to get together, or even regionally distributed, right? There needs to be a way to get them together to continue to grow that culture. So I think it comes from all three of those places. Probably sometimes the C-suite won't recognize things until they hear it from the workforce. So there will be the sort of the enlightened group will see that, but others may need to get the message from the workforce.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then the last question we have is about budgeting. And clearly from a finance person, trying to understand how you're evaluating a budget for this type of travel, because it's so new and different, right? It's not the typical sending, let's just say a traveling salesperson to, a corporate event or even a convention. You're bringing multiple people together, perhaps in different parts of the world. So what's the best way to approach this new way of looking at a travel and expense budget?
I don't think that anybody's really completely figured that out yet, right? It was sort of easy in the old days. You could go, hey, we spend this many dollars on salespeople's travel, and we got this many contracts as a result of that. But the metrics are a little deeper when you start to think about you're thinking about how you develop your culture within your organization. And so there's certainly an HR aspect to it, right? Of when you can look at it from an HR perspective and see, overall performance of people. You can look at retention rates and those sorts of things as you think about it, because those personal connections are reasons that people stay with companies, right? If you have someone who's never met anybody in person in your company, your chances of losing them are probably higher than people who've built those personal connections with other people. So it's not fully defined yet. It's still a work in process around how you put KPIs or metrics around the cost of these travels and budgets. So I wish I had a better answer for you, but it's still a work in process.
Okay. Johnny, thank you so much. It was insightful to hear your thoughts around the future of travel of work. I believe there's so much we'll see coming from the industry as work evolve, as technology evolve, as the real estate, commercial real estate will evolve. So there's definitely much to expect and that we will be able to see in the coming years. Obviously, from that aspect, fascinating. And yeah, thank you again, and hope to chat with you soon.
Happy to do it. Hopefully the audience found some of what I had to say useful.
Well, thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thanks.
I
Go
absolutely.
ahead, Kristen.
And I just want to say to everyone a reminder that you will receive a recording of this in your inbox. You can also find Johnny on LinkedIn and Twitter/X if you have any more questions or want to reach out. And of course, you can find Flexspace there as well. And you can visit and learn more about Flexspace at flexspace.ai. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks to our host and, of course, our special guest.
Thank you.